few newbies this time, lots of regulars. Thank you for joining us on this very, very warm August afternoon. I'm really excited because we're going to hear from Laura from the City of Houston Sustainability Office. She's going to talk to us a lot about just energy and energy use from the city. The city is one of the largest, if not the largest, municipal consumer of green energy. Is that right? And one of the largest consumers of green energy in the world, along with Facebook and Amazon and Google. So it puts us in some interestingly large company. Before we get started, maybe very briefly, we can just go around the room. We'll say our name, we'll say what we do for a living, and we'll say what is the favorite meal that we had this week. So my name is Jeff, I'm a consultant, and the favorite meal that I had this week, I had leftover Killen's Steakhouse. It was awesome. So Frank, why don't you get us started here? I'm going to pick on you first.
My name is Frank. I do words, and I do vocabulary projects, for own purchasing and other global goals. But my favorite meal this week was sushi at Onopoki.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you, Frank. Which way do you guys want to go? Okay.
Hi, I'm Jazz. This is my first time. I do mobile development for Harris County, and my favorite meal, I had Sonic last night. Yeah, right.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Kabir Desman, mechatronics engineer or automation engineer. And it's not actually my first time, but it's the first time here at this station.
Cool. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a hydrologist, hydraulics training, and I had a great lunch at Relish the other day.
At where now?
At Relish,
Okay.
on Western, reasonably priced. The food was delicious. I highly recommend it.
Cool. 5 stars.
I'm Robin. I'm a software developer, and I think my favorite meal this week so far has been fajitas at El Tiempo.
Ooh, that's a classic.
It was crazy,
Nice.
but it's
Awesome.
I'm Tyler. I do tech support stuff, and my favorite meal last week was grilled oysters
Ooh, from where?
at this dive bar on San Leon.
Cool. Judith?
Well, I'm Judith, and I'm a process development chemical engineer. I work for a company that is making biofuels from syngas in the gasification process. So this talk was right up my alley. And my favorite meal was arroz con pollo. I made it myself, and my husband and I are going to be eating it probably through the end of the week.
Fantastic.
I'm Catherine. I'm a student at Rice University City, and my favorite meal was probably I went out to Tiger Bay.
Cool. We're saying our name, what we do, and our favorite food from the last week.
Okay. I'm Larissa Williams. I'm the energy manager with the City of Houston's Administrative and Regulatory Affairs Department. This is my daughter, Madison. She's from daycare. So my favorite meal this past week was at Grace's. I had the stuffed poblano pepper. It was so good.
What was this stuff with?
Crawfish.
Oh my God.
And a dirty rice.
Whoa.
I'm Laura Cottingham. I'm with the City Sustainability Office, and my favorite meal was also fajitas. But it was one of those weird concoctions where they smother it. They cover it with like bacon and peppers and cheese. So it wasn't like good enough that it really intensified it to make it as unhealthy as possible.
Awesome. We'll jump back to Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I am a high school science teacher by day, and in the evening I'm chair of the Houston Sierra Club, and I don't have a favorite meal, I have really good beer at the conservatory.
That counts.
Okay.
Have you all been to this conservatory? Is where your next favorite meal is going to come from. It's awesome. Andy?
I'm Annie. I work for City of Houston Mayor's Office, and I had really good cooking on Saturday.
Cool.
My name is Robert Vaughn. I run a makerspace here in town, and I'm allergic to everything, so food is my dinner.
That's a bummer.
was, my name's Ian, I'm an engineer and a data scientist. I got to go to Key this weekend, which was really good.
Cool.
So I was excited about that. It's really good. You guys can do that. It's like, so Kuchi is Japanese food, then the Key is Filipino food. That kind of same fusion, yeah. And it's like 2 doors down. Yeah.
Do they take coupons? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
I think there are
McDonald's
some
gift
food that
certificate.
they had some looking one. So you could probably pass a favor with that.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves and spending your evenings with us tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to bring up Lara and Catherine. And bring the whole team up. Let's bring the whole team up. They're going to tell us about City Energy, and it's interactive. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and go from there. Thank you all so much.
Here's where.
It's our first presentation.
It's a super informal. We're not really sure what it is you guys wanted to hear about. But basically, when people think about Houston, they don't necessarily think about sustainability. Maybe they think about the port or NASA, but probably oil and gas, right? Probably. We are the energy capital of the world. And so we have a really big responsibility. We helped power and fuel and create all of the carbon emissions from the past several years, so we have to come up with that next way. What are we going to do? So then for the city of Houston, what does that mean? Because a lot of the refineries, a lot of the oil and gas companies, maybe their headquarters are in here, but they might not necessarily be operating in the city of Houston proper. So what we've done, what Mayor Turner has done, Mayor Parker, mayors going back, has said that we really need to figure out a way to lead by example. We need to make our operations as sustainable as possible. We want to use as little fuel, we want to use as little energy as possible, and we want to show that if a city like Houston, that is big and industrial, and the energy capital of the world can be sustainable, then absolutely anybody else can. And really, the ways that we've done that so far, as I mentioned earlier, we are the largest municipal user of green power in the United States. So we're at about 89% right now. We're not even at 100%, and we're already beating out every other city in the United States. If we were a company, we would be number 8, number 7, not sure which one, but we're like right under Google and right above Starbucks. So think about that scale, and that's just the energy that the city of Houston uses. That's not residences, that's not on the private side, that's just what we use in our operations every day. But that's your street lights, that's the traffic lights, that's the wastewater system that makes sure that you have all types of water running around the city. So we are really a big energy consumer, and the fact that we use mostly wind, and then this year we brought on our first solar plant, a 50 megawatt solar plant in Alpine, Texas. Really exciting. It came online in time for Earth Day, and so now we can say that buildings like the Houston Zoo, some of the airport terminals at Bush Intercontinental, and my office building, which is 611 Walker, right across the street from City Hall, those are all powered by solar. That wastewater treatment center system, it's the biggest in the United States, that's partially powered by solar. So that's pretty cool. And when you think about the fact that because we are a deregulated city, we can't just go out and buy a solar farm. We have to find a way to construct a really complicated power purchase agreement. The fact that we did that is great, and that sets that example to other cities across the country and in other countries, that if we can do it, we can. Anybody else can. And something else that we are kind of here to talk about today is the idea of our buildings. Because if you think about carbon emissions, they come from transportation, they come from recycling, but they also can come from buildings. So the city of Houston has a lot of buildings. One of the questions we always have is actually how many buildings do we have, and no one is really entirely sure. But however many we have, we want them to be as efficient as possible. And so since 2007, the city of Houston has really looked into energy efficiency and retrofitting. We've retrofitted over 6 million square feet in our buildings. We've brought our emissions down by 35%. That's pretty amazing, because it's been low-hanging fruit. It's been things like installing different light bulbs, going through when you're going to make just regular building updates, how do you make sure that those are also energy efficiency updates? And that's something that's going to keep happening probably forever as technology increases. Things that we changed out in 2017, they're either
those light bulbs are burning out, or there's a whole new type of technology that's available. And so Larissa Williams here, she's our energy manager. She's overseeing kind of in partnership with Catherine, who was our Rockstar intern from Rice this summer, our building portfolio. And we have 500 to 480, depending on how you classify it, City of Houston buildings. And one of the links that we have goes to the open data site. The links that we have here on the City of Houston's open data portal, if you search electricity, it'll come up. This is all of the electricity and all of the natural gas bills as far back as we have. And we are in that situation where we have more data than we know what to do with. We put it into the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and we look at it building by building. But we would love to push this out to the world hive mind and see what you all can think about it, what you would do with it. And Catherine here can talk more about that if that's what you're interested in. If we have questions, we're totally apt to anything.
So how do you identify an inefficient building?
So we measure things by their energy use index, the EUI. And basically it's looking at the size of the building square feet and then its energy consumption over time. I guess we could pull up our portfolio too, but that's way probably more than you want to go into it. But
We love the data.
Yeah, why don't you just put one of those up for an example?
okay, go to what is portfolio? Just Google portfolio manager. And it should come up.
Literally.
Or can I Google it over here?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're very big.
Yeah.
How many?
They're about, on just one of the tabs, I think, it depends, some of them are about 40,000, some of them are about 70,000. And then there's about 10 tabs per also, or, yeah. So they take a while to download.
But basically you're just comparing energy usage with the square footage, and then there's some characteristics of how many people work in the building, how many hours the building is open, how many computers there are, is it a lab, is it an office building, is it a, different building types.
So it normalizes it to compare two buildings that are completely different to each other.
Am I putting on the right Houston Star, right? Oh, this one cap or this one?
I'm sorry?
Do folks compete, does a building compete against another building?
So we put together an entire portfolio and then give that to the Department of Energy. And so it's really us kind of competing against ourselves throughout the years to see how much more we can improve.
Are there any employee incentives? I remember the city had a green building challenge at one point. Was that like an energy savings thing? Or was
So
that
we had the Houston Green Office Challenge that was for the public and buildings to participate in. Interestingly enough, within the city of Houston, all kinds of businesses, you have one person who probably does your finance, one person who pays the bills, and so you don't necessarily know what's going on. And that's kind of the same way in departments in the city that they don't necessarily know, especially if you share a giant office building. If your building's not sub-metered, so you don't get that individualized bill, you don't know what's going on. And we're trying to look into that. I don't know. It doesn't,
And what's the format of how does the data come to you? Is it in an Excel file, is it a PDF meter sheet?
So we get it through SAP. This is another one of those kind of Every city is different. If we owned our utility, we would have all of that information and all of your information, which would be really cool, right? Because instead of showing you these spreadsheets, we could show you everything that's going on. That's the way it is in Austin, that's the way it is in San Antonio. We deregulated. So we get our information from our electricity company and our natural gas provider, right? So we get it through SAP and we get monthly spreadsheets after the fact.
What about, I know that this isn't electricity, but what about water where the city does own the utility?
That we have everything for. Okay, now it just went
Are there any plans to release any water data or abstracted water data to the public?
I mean, abstract is available right now. We can probably, we're working on an API so that if we could log in and this computer just like went to sleep. Like the computer went black. I'll step away, but what it would do is it'll automatically upload your data. So when we talked about the Green Office Challenge, and we can talk a little about Portfolio Manager and benchmarking. Benchmarking is very important, but it can be a pain. Because if you really think about it, the report card on your buildings, are you using more, are you using less over time? Super simple. And our natural instinct is that we want to get that A, we want to get that star, and we want to see everything is getting better, not worse. Although in this case, down is better, right? We want to use less. So that's basically what this is. But we have, 500 buildings, and so it's a really intensive job to input all of this data, all of the 10,000 meters by hand every month, because we don't have the ability to upload it directly to Energy Star. Some different businesses do have more advanced networks than we do, but it would be great if every single business, every single building in Houston did this, and that's something we don't have that data set, and nobody really does, because buildings are one of the biggest sources of emissions for our city, and so we are lucky that Houston has a lot of brand new, really nice, fancy buildings that are much smarter than City Hall, or much smarter than our buildings that are old, right? They were built before a lot of this existed. So you have a lot of really smart new buildings where they get their energy data in 15-minute increments, and they know what's going on. So for the older buildings, it takes a little more work, but that's really how you see, are we performing, are we underperforming? Should we make some kind of investment? Could we make a lot of savings? Because there's a lot of energy savings to be had out there. Any luck? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's an example building?
So we pulled up Bob Lanier as an example.
So this is the 611 Walker Public Works building that we office out of. Lots of the city administration offices are in there, and pull up
The energy.
yeah. So that shows you going back to 2012. And that's pretty, apart from that one kind of spike, but it looks pretty cyclical, right? So what we're doing right now is if you look at every single building, you go back and you say, what was that spike, right? Was that in, can you click on that, what date was it?
Let's see. March of 2014.
Okay, March. So it's unlikely we had a snowstorm, because that's natural gas. Could be, or, there was a flood, could be a flood. Something that caused a really high use of natural gas. Otherwise, what does that mean? It means something, there could have been a leak, there could have been error in the meter billing, but apart from that, it looks pretty cyclical and expected. That's what you want to see. We're going through building by building, looking at all of them. A lot of them do not look like this. Some of them are all over the place, but this is one of the buildings that we actually have monitored from Energy Savings Performance Contractor. So this is part of that 6 million square foot that we've invested in to make sure that over time we're using less and less and less energy.
So is this data the same as the data that is on the data portal?
Yes.
And-
Yes. The only difference is that this is after we took those spreadsheets, put them in by hand, and it charts it for us.
So what I was going to ask, and I'm preempting Roland, so we wanted to ask a question too. If you could see something, what kinds of technical products would you want to see that would make your life easier? And what I'm hearing is it would be great if, even before you put it into Energy Star, you would have a way of comparing building to building or trends. Is that right?
Definitely. I mean, one thing is putting it in Energy Star. Energy Star is just the standard that the US government puts out that's free, right? All of those things are good, but it's not the easiest to input data. So there are other products out there on the market, but usually you have to have a contract with them, and they get with your retail electric provider, and they take your data and they put it in for you.
I think
So-
it would be pretty easy for this group, people in this group, people even sitting at this table, to build a dashboard that just takes the Excel spreadsheet in its current form and gives you this ability to kind of pick a month, pick a building, and chart them and plot them against one another. Is that something that's
Yeah, I might even actually do it. I would do a statistical analysis, so you come from the distribution curve, and USA Auto Insurance does something really cool where for any day when you log in and like sale price of the car, you can put that in and it shows you where it lies on that curve. So is it normal, like is it even the range? Is it way high? Is it way low? And there are software programs, there's statistical software programs there, so you dump all of your Excel data and it automatically spits out the numbers for you. And then you have that visual to see.
Very
these
cool.
are free things?
Yeah.
We're not talking about like. SAP,
Yeah, it's like
right?
free stuff, but
I have two questions. One of them is probably not really thinking about, do you track the improvements that you've made? I mean, it's one thing to track and look at, okay, we're reducing our energy usage, but then are those correlated with actual improvements you've done in the building? So like, for instance, I'm just thinking of this building we're seeing right now, like when they made a set of decisions on energy efficiency, this building was improved. And there's tons of these other buildings in Houston that are about to be done. East End is chock full of redos. Is that knowledge already known? Is the energy efficiency kind of techniques for improving the building already known? Or are you guys gleaning information from this data and then feeding it back into the system and saying, okay, well, when you do improvements, use this type of lighting, use this type of air efficiency, this installation, or is, which way does that data kind of flow? Is it, maybe a big question,
Well, I joined the city of Houston 2 months ago.
So it's somewhere, but not.
As the energy manager, but from what I've gathered, there was a performance contract implemented about 6 or 7 years ago, and at that time, they called them energy services companies, so ESCOs, and a part of their contract is to not only install the energy efficiency upgrades, but to monitor the upgrades that have taken place within the facilities and give the city kind of a scorecard or maybe an update on what the upgrades are doing and what the efficiency ratings are and how much the city has actually saved. But through several years, from what I've gathered from some of the documents I've read, there's not been any one individual that has actually monitored that in a while for the city. So that's part of what our efforts are, to collect this data, input it into Portfolio Manager, and kind of do an evaluation and an assessment to see where we are, post installation of some of the mechanical equipment.
There are kind of like, there's just upgrades that you can do. That you start out with the easiest, the low hanging fruit, right? The putting in different light bulbs and caulking your windows and better insulation, and that gets progressively harder when you're looking at HVAC systems and boilers and green roofs, and the sky really is the limit as to how, till you get a zero emissions building. So you can look at it that way. We try to look at what are the buildings that are either an outlier as far as they're using the most energy, or what are the buildings that you stand to gain the most from a reduction. So talk about the health lab.
So there's one lab.
Rockstar intern found this.
So there's one lab in the City of Houston Health and Services Department that accounts for between 90 and 95% of all health and human services energy usage. And so we're not really sure why. It's one of the Houston's largest labs. They do a lot of rabies sample testing.
It's the main health lab for the city and the county. And so anytime there's a Zika case or rabies or something, it gets sent there. But if you look at it, this one building is just off the charts.
It accounts for, I think, about between 35 and 40, if I remember right, 35 to 40% of all of the City of Houston energy use, excluding,
Well, so
and that's excluding
that it's a lab,
wastewater.
right? And we know that it's a really big lab. But what we're trying to do is get money to do an audit and go through and say, like, we know that it's an energy intensive building. We understand that. But does it have to be that intensive? And are there things that we can do? Because that's one building where maybe there's potential for an investment there could have a really big savings.
Incremental savings.
Right.
Huge, yeah.
Right.
So I've spoken with we have general services department, building maintenance group that goes out and looks at the facilities. So I spoke with the contractor about this particular building. And from what he's told me during his walkthrough, there are 5 boilers in this facility and they run all 5 of them pretty much all day, all the time. And let's see, the air handling units, we checked those, it's almost 100% occupancy, but one of the issues that he identified during his walkthrough is the boilers running. And 5 boilers should not be running really all day,
Right.
all together.
We love our air conditioning
Right.
here in Houston.
What's being done from his assessment is that the building is being overcooled or supercooled, so to speak, to control the humidity and moisture within the facility because there's not enough fresh air, open air that comes through to remove the moisture out of the building. And when you have a situation like that, of course that drives up the energy cost.
Do they have samples or equipment, like instruments that need to be controlled and monitored?
Probably
Sounds
so.
that way.
Probably so. I haven't visited the facility yet, but that is my next item on the list to do a walkthrough.
Is this
Maybe contact our state's energy office, they do energy assessments and audits on facilities, so.
Is this the Federal Road facility?
No, this is,
Okay, I have to leave in like
no, it's actually on Holcomb Street?
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just looking through the
2250
bills
Holcomb.
right now.
2250 or
she has all the
2252?
buildings in her head. Many things going on right now.
I have a question.
Yes, it's Holcomb Lab.
For example, for the table, the energy time you have electric grid. So does it mean you have other times like renewable energy and so on? I see grid.
Right, it says, so we use renewable energy, but we do not directly own very, very little. We have a couple of solar panels on site, but for the most part, we pull straight from the grid. If we did have on-site generation, there would be a separate line, a separate graph.
Because these right here are the 2 meters that we use. So this is the electricity and then the natural gas. And so then there would be
You would
like
get a third if.
there
for
would be
some
like
reason-
wind power, solar power separately. If we had a separate meter that was
And you have like any sort of statistics or numbers showing the total of grid and the comparison between it and solar sets and so on. We don't have it.
And what are you comparing? How
I mean,
much,
Yeah,
how?
how much?
So what we do is because, let's try to figure out. We are a deregulated city, so we cannot go out and purchase a solar farm and directly connect it, right? Now that's a gross simplification of ERCOT and the way that it works in Texas, but we cannot directly power our buildings that way. We have to have a power purchase agreement. So basically, we agreed with Reliant, our current vendor, that they will buy a solar farm, they agree to take that power, and then we agree to purchase the amount that they're taking. So an electron is an electron. Something is going to come our way and make our lights turn on, but what we're doing is we're paying to make sure that they built that solar facility out in Alpine and making sure that the exact amount that they're putting onto the grid, we're taking on.
Does the city have any data on the condition and equipment within each building? Because like you know what the class of the building, what the insulation is, what the tonnage of the air conditioners are, what kind of other fixtures and items in the buildings can you use to determine the baseline of the buildings that you're using?
Yes, I mean loosely, yes. We have found that our baseline is 2007, and that is because that's the first year that we have data that was, I guess that's when we started SAP. So that was the first year that we actually have data that we can keep. And we have information on the size of the buildings and largely what they were used for. We put that into Energy Star to the portfolio manager because it takes a couple of information points and then puts it in an algorithm and tells you probably what that building would be like. So it's not that exact detail for every single building. Like this building has 5 boilers, this building has 4. We don't get down to that level. If we were to do an audit, an energy audit on a building, we'd go back and we'd really find that data. We don't have access to that. The General Services Department, they know like the actual equipment in the buildings that they manage. That's just more information that we can handle as far as updating this particular database. So that's why, I mean, this is a across the city department operation. We are constantly going to GSD, we're going to finance, we're going to the insurance team, we're going to Centerpoint, we're going to Reliant. You know, we are always looking to other people for information. Going to the health department saying, what actually do you guys do in this building? And that's just one building. We have fire stations. We did a fire station energy challenge earlier this year where we took 12 fire stations, and it was October, November, and December. And Archaea was our partner. And we said, for these 3 months, let's see how much energy you can save. Using, I think they got more energy efficient power strips, some LEDs that we could switch out, and that was basically it. You know, just saying, try, like just see what you can do. And we saw in the winter a 44% energy EUI decrease, which means they became 44% more energy efficient. And almost all of them saw at least a 10% savings, so that was pretty cool. We'll say this, don't ever do any big project with a fire department right before the Super Bowl, because they dropped off the face of the earth in December, and we could not do anything with them again until like April, I think, or May.
Yeah,
So
it was my first day.
Right.
in May.
First day, we took her to all of these fire stations, but
So-
just because they were so busy. But
So the entire savings was entirely behavioral?
behavioral and, I mean, I'm not gonna say it was, hey, you guys should all use this different charging station, but the
like
idea
little things
of, right, turning the lights off, really it was the competition between them that helped, because they said, okay, well, we're not gonna use the kitchen, we're gonna grill everything outside, which is a little bit cheating, but also
Everybody ate.
I love the spirit, exactly. But it also started a longer conversation, because some of the fire stations were brand new, and they said things like, hey, we're freezing in here. We're freezing because you have the AC on, and you have the AC on because the occupancy load for this building is 48. It's 48 because that includes all 3 shifts. They're never in that building, maybe once a year they're in the building the whole time. The rest of the time, 1 shift is there, and they're often outside. So we have that case of building code says you have to have this, but functionally it doesn't really match the usage, and so they're cold, and we're air conditioning a building that's empty a lot of times. So we take that back to our teams and say, how do we deal with that, and at least it'll help us when we're retrofitting or building new fire stations down the road, things like that. Also a lot that they said, well, we have no control over our buildings, they're managed by someone else, what can we do? And they found that they actually, could do some stuff. They had a lot more control than they thought.
So hopefully this isn't too much tangent, but speaking of like, I guess these firefighters, is the gas used to fuel fire trucks and ambulances and whatever in the city, is that reflected in your energy costs?
Just buildings.
Just buildings,
Right, yeah. That's like gasoline.
yeah.
This is natural gas.
Right, exactly, but is it reflected anywhere?
We take that into account when we do our overall emissions audit and our annual carbon disclosure report. We factor in transportation, so we factor in all of the fuels that we use. It's not in this because this really just looks at buildings.
But is that an area that the city is looking to become more efficient?
Yes. So we are, I want to say we're the 4th largest green hybrid electric CNG alternative fuel fleet in the country. Some cities have a lot cooler vehicles. I think Los Angeles has to deal with Tesla, so their police have Teslas. But we have a pretty big hybrid fleet, and we have a pretty big electric vehicle fleet that you might have seen. We have a bunch of Prii and Nissan Leafs that park underneath City Hall, and they're part of our fleet share, which is actually really innovative for the city because in addition to them being electric, it saved departments a lot of money so that instead of every department having 12 cars, maybe you have 12 cars for 3 departments and they share them. The efficiency and utilization is really high, which means they're being used more, and every department doesn't pay for maintenance, every department doesn't pay for fuel, every department just puts in a little bit, so it worked out really well. Yes?
Yes, I'm interested in other 70 or 80% of the renewable energy. Is that's wind?
Yes.
And is that you have a purchase agreement with a wind farm? Or are these renewable wind credits? So could you
Yes.
speak to that?
We purchase
What's the
renewable.
advantage of the renewable energy credit over the wind farm?
It's cheaper, first of all, than building a wind farm that could fuel power the city of Houston. That would be massive, right? And so that would be a really long and expensive undertaking, whereas right now, we purchase the credits, which are publicly traded, so they're less expensive than the capital to put it down upfront. Does that make sense?
I'm kind of thinking about this, just going back to the data, how much time is spent inventorying this information and updating reports?
So that was what I did most of this summer.
Okay.
There were a lot of places here. Let me just pull up. So if we click on this, click on one of the meters, it will give basically what's on those spreadsheets. Just the usage and the start and end date. And so my first job was basically to go through and input the rest of the ones that weren't in yet. But then also check for those spikes that we have and just see what might have caused them, if they're natural, like if it occurs in January or if it is in March, like that last one. So that was really my summer, was going through and trying to start some of that quality check.
It takes a while, for sure.
Yeah.
We turn it into the Department of Energy in March every year for the full year before. So February is always a little rough. There's a lot of late nights coming in and making sure you get everything. It's easier to put in the natural gas data. You can put that in for the whole city by month. But the electric side, you have to really do a lot of it by hand.
One of the biggest issues we found when doing this analysis is that the natural gas bills start on the first month or the first day of the month and then end the last day of the month. But here's an example of the electricity bills. And so the January one starts on the 22nd, or it starts on December 21st, 2016, but then ends January 22nd, 2017. And so there's that weird overlap with months.
Oh,
And so
you don't get a
sometimes-
month, you don't get a day by day.
You only get them month by month.
Sometimes we get 13 bills in a month.
Right.
And then we also get, it's usually in April or March, we'll get a clump of corrected bills that
And they say, just kidding. And so you have to go back and redo everything. So
Yeah.
There-
so,
this is our task, our challenge to come up with a way that could make this easier until we can, hopefully in a year or two, we will have a updated system that, and maybe we can even get some of the data, you said day by day, we get it in 5, 10, 15-minute intervals. That would be really interesting, because then you're basically seeing what's happening in your building. Because they're a little bit alive, right? And that's how you tell, hey, something's wrong. This building is overusing, underusing, and that's how you prevent a serious leak or break or something. Until right now, we find out that, hey, the elevator's not working. Right?
So I'm so sorry. Please. The power company owns the meter on the building, not the city of Houston.
Yes.
So
Centerpoint's
you
meter.
have to go through them to get that.
So it's Centerpoint's meter, but our information goes to Reliant and our chain, and we get it from them. If we had sub-meters and if we paid for that extra service, we could get it, but we don't have that in all of our buildings. We only have it in a couple.
That's a perfect setup. So I'm gonna ask you about CenterPoint smart meters. Like I can look at my Texas smart meter and I can see my electricity usage every 15 minutes. Help me, you cannot do that?
We can look at that same data, but it doesn't match our bills. So So we gotta go with this. We've looked into that, because that would be easier, but if it doesn't match,
Why doesn't it match your bill?
I do not know.
Customer service.
Right.
Do you know if you pay, if your kilowatt hour rate changes, or once you're locked in, or you're locked in to a certain amount?
Our contracts are very complex. It is a combination of everything. There are some things we pay for separate, and then once you reach some point, we pay for another thing. Then we added the solar PPA on top of that just to make it more confusing. So it's a little bit of everything.
So speaking of, solar, is that like 20 or 30 years at a fixed rate?
20 years. 20 years.
20 years. And what about big renewable energy credits? What is that time?
We purchase those on an annual basis, and I'm working on that. Because there's a lot more options available now. Everything's becoming more affordable. But one of the things that the city of Houston is really adamant about is that our sustainability program has to make smart business sense as well as smart environmental policy, right? We don't want to advocate for something just because it's the good thing to do if it costs us a lot more money, because we are stewards of public funding. And so as long as natural gas is very competitively cheap, you know, their solar and wind is getting more and more affordable, but we have to be careful. We're not going out and trying to buy a huge wind farm that would power the entire city, because A, that doesn't really exist yet, and B, what's that gonna look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, as the market grows and expands and things become even more affordable. Hopefully, not gonna. Lots of things are in flux.
Two real quick ones. One, you said you had metadata about all these accounts, say like square footage of the building, how many stories it's occupied or not. Is that available online somewhere?
That's not publicly available,
Could it be? Should we request it?
so you might need to request it. If it's not, I honestly don't know if it is or not, but I can get it to you. It's just not
Who
on.
should we request it from?
I would
Who wants-
start with GSD
Okay.
and go from there.
Okay.
And the second quick one, this may be too detailed about the contract you guys have with Reliant or Rebuy Your Energy. Do you know if that's exposed to the wholesale energy market, or if it's fixed price you play or you pay? Something like if like the energy cost spikes because it's really, really hot one day, do you guys eat some of that cost, or is it more like how retail account?
I am happy to give you the contract. It is quite large. It also is about to expire, and we're going to go out for a new one. So think about cool and exciting new ideas there. Because a lot has changed from 7 years ago. Well, and what's really neat is I get probably a call once a month from solar and wind developers saying that we want to be your sole provider. Right? And I'm like, do you really understand how much energy we use? And the answer is no, they don't, because they usually don't come back. But the idea that they see what we're doing, they're really excited, because it's that combination of Houston being the energy capital of the world that wants to be 100% renewable, and they want to be they want us to be their sole customer. So the idea that they're working on building something that could cover us 100% would be really, 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 really tough. And I don't think it's quite there yet. But those calls didn't happen not too long ago. And a lot of them are in Texas, which is actually really neat.
I think the new future is also because Houston is so sunny, there's too much sun, and you see in Germany, for example, some days you have only 2 hours of sun, but all public parkings, all any outdoor services actually is covered by solar panels. Bundestag buildings, government buildings, is fully supplied by solar panels. Really, you have sometimes like 2 hours only per day. 2 hours only is something, so but still the system is running and working, and there are electricity plugged in, there are no grid, so I think there is a possibility here. image efficiency solar panels before you have to have a large solar panel to provide enough voltage to system around small. So
I mean, I think that we're moving in the right direction, but I also think that, well, Houston has been identified as Google as the #1 potential for residential solar, meaning we don't have that much here, but that means there's just that much opportunity, and because we are sunny and warm and all of those things, so there's lots of room for me. I have to get out of here, but it's really, really fun. Do you guys have any other questions? I can give you my contact information if it wasn't already on there, but please let us know if you have anything and that we can help with.
How about a round of applause for? So we can hang out and work, get some stuff done, log some ideas, ask some questions of the folks to stick around. Thank you all very much. And yeah, we've got the room till 8, so.